What up, what up, what up, what up? Welcome to the usual Sunday night shenanigans. Just give it a few minutes and see if we get a few people to chime in before we get started on tonight's topics. But as always, welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you guys could, join me tonight. We got some interesting topics to discuss. Hey, how you doing, Grant? Glad you could hop on tonight. Just give it a few more minutes. Hey, how you doing, Traveling T? We're going to get started in just about 60 seconds. Hey, Jen, how you doing? Good to see you tonight. We will get started in just one moment. I just wanted to, like I said, I usually go to about 3-minute mark just to give people time to chime in. I did promote people, going ahead and actually clicking that notification button so that way they could see, when it is that I actually go on. So that was a tip from Twan, for when people subscribe to get them to hit that notification so they know when we go live. All right, so we just passed the 3-minute mark, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm grateful for everybody that comes back and tunes in, every Sunday with me. Good seeing you. Random live last week. Yeah, you know what I mean. I actually did that. I went live randomly in the middle of the week because that's not something I typically do, but I had time that day, and it helps to like grow the channel. So I said, why not? I would go ahead and just do like a midweek live, and what I'm actually doing is just kind of like doubling down on that particular live, as well as adding some other things, some things I wasn't actually able to really talk about, or finish, when I actually started that one. So we're gonna go ahead and like I said, just dive in a little bit deeper on that and just talk about a few other things tonight. So should be pretty interesting. So basically, what Traveling T is alluding to is me talking about, hey, how you doing, Miss Nikki 48? Basically, he's alluding to me talking about the healthy belly fat, and what I meant by that is we talking about measurements, right? Because what I was doing was trying to get people to sort of kind of like, once they get to a certain point in their journey, kind of put the scale to the side and really kind of like dive in on using that tape measure and measuring their belly circumference, right? Because that's really where the true health lies, is there. It's not necessarily the scale. Because once you get to a certain point, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds, it becomes, for you to actually gauge your health is not always relying upon this getting to the lowest possible weight you can get to, right? because that's not the end all be all, right? Because to be really healthy, matter of fact, I'll read the definition and I'll go back into it. A healthy belly waist circumference should generally be less than 35 inches for women and less than 40 inches for men. So if you got your tape measure, for ladies, that's about 88 centimeters, and for men, that's about 102 centimeters. My actual belly, if I did it right, was at like 119. So I'm still like 8 inches. Well, probably like 48 inches, if I'm going to go around my belly button. And if I am doing the centimeters, it's probably like 119, you know what I mean? Or 118. So I'm still a ways away from that, even though I lost nearly 100 pounds. You know what I mean? Hey, what up, Paul? How you doing, man? Glad to have you chime in with us tonight, on this Sunday. So, yeah, so I'll go a little bit farther with the definition. So a healthy belly waist circumference should generally be less than 35 inches for women and less than 40 inches for men. Keeping the waistline below these measurements helps to reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure. Okay, so keys: a woman should be less than 35, a man should be less than 40. Optimal metric: an ideal stricter target is a waist measurement for less than half your height. Right. So if you're 5'6" or 66 inches tall, your waist should be around 33 inches, right? So I'll say it again. A stricter target is a waist measurement that's less than half your height. So if you're 5'6", that's 76 inches, right? So your waist should be under 33 inches. Now, there are ethnic specifics, right? For individuals of Asian and South American descent, a healthy waist circumference is often considered less than 35.5 inches for men and 31.5 inches for women due to metabolic risk at lower body weights. So what that's saying is they carry more visceral fat, right? They carry more visceral fat. Welcome in. If you just came in the chat, please like, because we have 9 bodies in, but 4 likes. So please like the stream, so that way, we actually are telling the algorithm that you actually enjoy these videos, and they'll suggest more to other individuals. If you are new here, let's please, when you subscribe, also click that notification button so you'll be notified when it is that I go live with these videos. I also want to add that I'm not a medical physician. I'm not your physician. And any questions that would lean towards those particular instances, you should refer to your specific physician. I'm just pretty much giving my experience through my lifestyle changes and lifestyle, I guess alterations you could call it, because some things I was doing prior, and me taking a GLP-1 medication to actually help myself to fight obesity. Okay. So yeah, we're talking about waist circumference, because it's not all about the scale, right? And at some point, if you're just simply relying on the scale, it can become pretty dangerous, from a muscle bone density standpoint, right? Because what you don't want to do is go too low. You don't want to go too low, but you also want to make sure you're optimal, and you're not necessarily still carrying around too much weight. So I said this the other day, this is not necessarily all about the individuals who are necessarily like just, 5 or 6 months into their journey, but it's more so for the individuals that has been on a journey for more than a year, right? More than 2 years, 3 years, really OGs. That's really what it is. It's those individuals who, the scale isn't moving much anymore. You know what I mean? Hi, G's, hi, everyone. Hey, sweatpants and champagne. So that's kind of like what it is. You know what I mean? It's more about that waist circumference. So you really got to kind of move that scale to the side and start measuring your body parts. Now, ladies might be a little bit more adept to doing this, than men, because, women, may be more likely to get like clothes, professionally made, like dresses and things of that nature. So they may have actually been through, measurements, and when they got on their journey, you know, I've seen, you know, some actually take those measurements. Now, what I've also seen is some of those individuals not do the measurement appropriate either, right? They haven't done the measurement appropriate. So when you actually are going to, well, let's read it. Stand up straight, place the tape measure around your bare abdomen just above your hip bone. Breathe out naturally, do not suck in your stomach. Ensure the tape is snug but not compressing the skin, right? So what I would say is what you want to do. Sorry, one that said hi, I was boxing the dog for shipping. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to actually take that tape measure and go right across that belly button. Right? Go right across that belly button. Because what it says is above your hips and below your rib cage. So for a lot of us, unless we're doing the x-ray, we can't even make out what that is, right? We can't make out what below the rib cage and above. So I've seen people doing it inaccurately, right, or incorrectly. So the best thing to do is actually go right around that belly, right across that belly button, right? That you go right across that belly button, and that will kind of give you a much better, you know, place, you know, for accuracy, right? So when you do that, because what you have is some people being too high, right? And so when they're really high, they're getting a lower measurement, and that's inaccurate, right? You're not getting the proper measurement because you're actually like much too high. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be that high when you're actually going to, you know, give out or go and try to write down, you know, where it is that you stand. You actually want to be a bit lower, but you also don't want to be too low either, right? So right, yeah, go right across that belly button with that tape measure. A large waistline often indicates excessive visceral fat around your organs, right? Which is strongly linked to insulin resistance and inflammation, right? So I felt like this was important because we have so many people that are, I mean, literally like so scale dependent. Like, well, how much I weigh now? How much I weigh now? How much I weigh now? When in all actuality, your lowest possible weight might not actually yield the best result, right? That might not yield the best result because you can go low and still possess a large amount of body fat, right? And that you don't want to do, right? You don't want to go really, really low and still have a ton of body fat, right? Because now you can be what they call skinny fat, right? Because your body fat is still too large, right? It's too much body fat. Now, what those percentages look like for men is pretty much anything that's 30 and above, right? You got 30% body fat and above, actually a little bit lower than that. So if you're a man and you have, let's say, 25% or more is considered, you know, not optimal, right? You know, because you definitely want to be right around 24, right? Now, we're not talking about BMI. BMI is another conversation, and most know, you know, what it is that, you know, like I said, for those that are clinically obese, that the obesity surgeon said. I wanted to pause and say we have 11 people watching, but we have 5 likes. So please, if you haven't subscribed to G's one of one, please consider doing so now, and also please like the stream. Please like the stream. We have 12 people watching and we have 5 likes. So please take a moment and like the stream, so that way the algorithm understands that this is what you like to see, and that, you know, it will actually, you know, train the algorithm to actually show you these type of videos, right, and others. So please like the stream if you have not liked the stream, because I have 12 people watching and 6 likes. Also, I would like for you to go and subscribe to G's One of One if you have not already, and make sure you tap those notification bell. Tap that little notification bell, so that way you actually will get notified, you know, when we actually go live, okay? That was something that I picked up from Traces of Twine, and I think it's Tommy. She goes by Tommy Girls Fit Life now. The other day when she was doing a bit of a tutorial on ways to grow the channel, right? So, like I said, if you have not liked the stream, please like the stream. We have 12 watchers and 8 likes. So please take a moment right now and just like the stream, okay? Thank you. And then hit that notification bell, the little bell under next to the subscription, so you'll be notified when we go live, okay? So we're talking about tape measure and measuring your belly circumference, right? Because, and just to go back, what that looks like, right? So for women, right? For women, that means you pretty much want a circumference of measure of 35 inches, right? Of 35 inches. And if you're a guy, you want it to be 40 inches or less. 40 inches or less, okay? That's pretty much what that means, okay? So now centimeters, if you want to say it in centimeters, that means it would be, hey, those are shiny. It would be 35, it would be 35 inches or 88 centimeters. And for men, it would be 40 inches and 102 centimeters. These are the things we want to start looking at beyond the scale. So we cannot keep getting on the scale every week and looking for losses, right? Because that's not going to actually pretty much net, what actual true health is. True health involves us lowering our visceral fat, right? So, and there are a multitude of ways to do that. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But I really wanted to run home what I meant by pushing the scale to the side and lowering and grabbing the tape measure and putting it around the waist so that way you can, check that. Now, some might say for women, a lot of times they don't have as much belly fat. They have, more fat in the lower extremities, right? But the fat in the lower extremities is a lot less dangerous, right? It's a lot less dangerous. You still want to reduce it, but it's a lot less dangerous than that fat that you have around the belly, because the one around the belly is suffocating those organs, right? And causing those organs to actually, not function appropriate at some point, right? So, and Miss Brown is in the chat. She says, good evening, everyone. So for those that are unaware, that's my wife, Taisha, and she's doing a great job with her journey too, which we'll talk about just a little bit later. I've been using her for my thumbnails because she's a lot cuter than me. So I use her for my thumbnails because I think it's more, it draws in more people to the channel. So we have 14 people, watching the stream, and we have 9 likes. So please pause for a minute, like the stream. If you have not subscribed, please pause and subscribe and hit the little bell, which is the notification, so that way you can be notified of these particular videos when they actually go live. Okay. So yeah, so we were talking about the measurements that men and women should have when they want to be considered healthy, right? So so basically that woman is you. Who is that woman on there? So yeah, so we definitely want to talk about, like I said, the belly fat, because that's visceral. So when you talk about visceral, you're talking about your organs. So that's why it's important to go ahead and make sure that, you're decreasing there. Now, some might say, well, how are we supposed to do that? Because you're kind of going to lose weight all over everywhere. You would be absolutely correct if you said that, because that is how it's going to work. The belly is the last place that you're going to lose fat. That's where all the energy is stored. And by design, your body wants to lose that fat in that particular place last. That's the last place that you're going to actually probably lose your weight, right? Because everything else, arms, legs, face, you know what I mean? Everywhere else, maybe even feet, you'll lose weight, but right, everybody says they got the lower extremity, you lose, fat in all of these places, and your stomach is still, but again, that's more about evolution, right? The way we evolved sort of kind of like set that up, for us. And that's why we all actually kind of like, store that energy there, because that stored energy, because way back in the day there, when they had famine, what I mean? That's the way we became designed. Now there are no famines, and we start to have these big bellies because we're storing too much energy, right? We're storing way too much energy, right? And then when it bleeds into other places, you're definitely out of bounds. When the face starts swelling up and the arms and everywhere else, you start to get that inflammation because it's kind of bleeding over. It's going beyond, what it is that you need for survival, right? So, because remember, food is fuel, right? G's got the game to pull tight. Yeah, so Jen in the chat cutting up. So yeah, so what it is you basically what's going on there is that you're basically sort of kind of like overeating, right? So when you overeat, that's when it actually builds up in that belly region. So that's why we actually have to go back to that, because all your vital organs, is right there in that region, right? It's right there in that region. Now, like I said, we want to talk about how do you change that? You change that by doing all of the things we always talk about, right? You optimize it by being consistent and not quitting, right? not coming off, you know, because it takes a long time to actually get to the point where you actually decreasing that body fat to an acceptable range if you somebody that's been clinically obese, because we were a lot of us were clinically obese, and being clinically obese, that means that your BMI was above 40, right? Your BMI was above 40. Now, to some people, it might seem elementary, but, you know, like I said a while ago, you know, on, I forgot what channel I was on, but we have to make sure that we're not getting cute, right? Because we've been on a journey and we done lost however many pounds and hit certain goals, and forget that there are people that's still on day one or week one, right? So we want to come back, right? Reach back, you know, and actually talk to those people about things that they might not be sure of, right? Because there's some people that have like the Bluetooth scale that might not still be able to read them. You know, there might be certain things on there they have questions about, you know what I mean? And even with Chat GPT and all that, things like that, because you can read something don't mean that you can always comprehend it, right? And what it means, right? And where I'm going with that is a kind of a segue into another conversation. Because you can have physicians, right, that come take your blood work or suggest you get blood work, interpret that blood work a certain way, right? And then pretty much give you advice on doing something that might not be optimal for you, right? And I'll go back and repeat what I just said. You might have physicians that order a particular blood test or blood work, right? And see a certain thing and order a certain thing and decide that, hey, this is what will fix it, and be completely wrong. Why? Because they misinterpreting what they're seeing for what it is and it ain't, right? Now that you might be, you know, super confused, like, wait, what are you talking about? Well, where I'm going with this is I want to talk about absorption of nutrients, right? Absorption of nutrients, right? Because you eat something don't mean that it actually ends up being absorbed appropriately, right? And what I mean by that is I'm going towards gut health, right? Because I'm talking about gut health because that gut health is super important. Gut health is super important because if you don't get the right gut health, right? If you don't have the proper gut health, right? You could be like, you know, like it could be like a rat race, you know. You could feel like you just pretty much running on a wheel, you know what I mean? Because you're not actually absorbing the actual nutrients you're putting in. Thus, we have these different things that come up, right? Now, I know them, but what I'll do is I'll pull it up and I'll read it to you, right? Because I want to be very specific, right? Because I'm segueing from moving away from the scale and starting to use the tape measure to optimize your health, right? And we started talking about, you know, belly fat, right? And how to optimize, right? So when it comes to belly fat, right, how do we actually reduce it, right? So that's where I'm going with the next, you know, segue, right? And the thing is, I know this, but I don't want to when I'm speaking, you know, scientifically, I don't want to be like stumbling over my words. So that's why I want to read it to you all, right? Directly. So knowing you are absorbing nutrients involves monitoring physical signs of vitality, right? So like steady energy, stable weight, healthy skin, and good digestion, or using medical tests, right? So key indicators of effective absorption include nutrient-rich blood tests, lack of chronic nutrient deficiencies, and minimal symptoms of indigestion, bloating, or chronic diarrhea, right? What are physical signs of good absorption? Stable energy levels, right? High energy and no chronic fatigue. Healthy hair and skin, strong hair, nails, clear skin, not brittle and breaking. Healthy body weight. Unintentional weight loss is a key indicator of malabsorption. Good digestive health, regular bowel movements, lack of excessive bloating, gas, or diarrhea, right? So we'll get into the testing in a second. So the thing is, if you always waking up and you feel like, well, man, I'm like so bloated and, you know, things like that, right? Now, we know what the side effects of the GLP-1 is gastrointestinal, you know, side effects, but we mean more than normal, you know, where you feel like, you know, you got to take more magnesium than normal, you know, flush your system, you know, consistently, stuff like that, right? That means that you might be eating food, but you're not absorbing the nutrients from that food, right? You might be putting it in your mouth, right? But it might not be, because see, there's a thing where like you could be drinking tons of water and still be dehydrated, right? And I think I had a little bit of that because my creatinine level, out of everything, my test was, wonderful. Everybody know I had optimal ranges with everything. I had the colonoscopy, and I got my heart ultrasound is tomorrow. For those of you, I have a heart ultrasound. That was my last thing on my list because I do have a regular heartbeat, and I regularly, at least annually, get ultrasound. So I do have an ultrasound for my heart tomorrow. So I'll let y'all know how that goes. Probably in the middle of the week, I'll do a short, or something like that, or maybe I'll make that a live, on that and talk about the heart. But basically, I had that tomorrow at 5 p.m. So I'll be going over to the cardiologist to get that done. So where was I at? Oh, so basically I was talking about absorption. So you basically want to make sure you're absorbing your nutrients, right? Because if you're not absorbing the nutrients that you're pretty much putting in the body, this is where some of these other things that you might think are just derived from the GLP-1 usage, right? Which is what we kind of tie everything back into, right? Is GLP-1 usage, your actual overall health, your visceral fat, right? We got 13 people in the chat watching the stream, and we got 10 likes. So if you're new here, please take a moment, pause, like the chat, pause, like the stream, and hit the bell, which is the notification button. If you hit that little bell, it will actually notify you when we come on for videos like this, and train the algorithm as to what it is that you like to see, and it hopes to grow the channel. Okay. And today, to just recap for some, what we're doing is we're talking about sliding the scale to the side and utilizing tape measures, right? The reason why we're utilizing tape measures is because we're going to measure our belly. And when we measure our belly, it's going to give us a key indicator whether or not we still got large amounts of visceral fat. If you still have large amount of visceral fat, I don't really care what the scale says as far as your weight is concerned, you still might be unhealthy, right? Because that visceral fat affects your organs, right? And those organs are going to affect your blood work, right? It's going to affect all those biomarkers, right? So those biomarkers are affected by those actual results. So the actual weight that you have is going to affect your results, right? Because losing weight is the key to tons of those markers. But where we were in the conversation before I paused was talking about absorption of your nutrients, right? Because you're eating and because you're drinking don't mean that your body is actually absorbing those nutrients. So because I want to dig a little bit deeper, because my actual belly still contains more fat than I should have, because right now I'm at 29. So my body fat percentage is 29. When I started this journey, it was right around 40, right? So I've lost a massive amount of body fat, but still not enough. I still could lose, another 10% to be optimal, right? Well, technically, to be optimal, I only really got to get to 22%, right? My goal, short-term goal, is to get to 25 because I'm at 29. So I get to 25, that will put me in a fairly safe range, right? From where I'm at right now, which is a bit unsafe at 29. You don't want to be 29%, fat. And I'm doing this because so many people are just looking at the scale, when in all actuality, just the number there, positive T, what up? And just the number there alone is not enough to scream health, right? We got to start looking at, that word everybody loves, recomposition, right? You know what I mean? We don't want to be, well, as far as, your visceral fat number is very important. So my visceral fat, when I first started, just to make it make sense, every Bluetooth scale is a bit different. Mine doesn't weigh or define the way other people's do. But I'll tell you, based on mine, when I first started, my visceral fat was 34. It was 34. My visceral fat today is 20. It's 20. So I've dropped a massive amount. I went from 34 to 20. So that's where my visceral fat. But this is what I'm saying. You can, without having, a Bluetooth scale, all of that, grab a tape measure, put the tape measure around your waist, right across the belly button. And if you're a lady and it's saying you're above 35, that's unhealthy. If you're a man and it's saying that it's above 40, that's unhealthy, right? You don't want to be above 40 as a man and above 35 as a lady. Now, I will tell you the win that I had this week. I did have a win because I am gaining muscle and losing fat, right? Because over the last 2 weeks, what I've been doing is, everybody's seen the videos, the shorts I do where I've been walking, pretty consistently. I walk outside on inclines, meaning on hills, right? I walk a hilly route, I walk a long route, and I've also incorporated weights. And I've been actually walking and working out in the same day. I used to separate them, but I've been doing both. So I've turned up a lot. I've turned up tremendously, So I'm actually excited for what I might see in the next few. I'm actually seeing things. I'll tell you this, and I was going to say before the end, I actually bought some new clothes, and I actually wear a 34 in pants now. Now, when I started this, I was wearing a 44, right? A 42, 44. Now I wear a 34. My pants are a 34. So that's a massive amount of inches. If that answers more questions about what's my visceral fat personally, I was wearing a 42, 44. My actual pants right now are a 34. That's what I wear. And then my shirts are extra large, all the way from a 3X, right? From a 3X to an extra large. My weight is down nearly 96, 97 pounds, right? I weigh 224 today. I was 223. My lowest recorded weight is 223, right? But I was 224. Now, again, I was aware that that would happen, and I'm actually happy about that. I've never been happy about a gain until this week. Now, the reason why I'm happy about a gain is because I've been lifting weights, right? I've been lifting weights. I had a fear of it because I had a bad shoulder, and I was using my body for resistance, but I've incorporated weights because I talked about that in my last live when I was talking about me being hungry from actually lifting weights. Lifting weights make me hungry. It really does. I actually went and bought my shakes again because I don't want to actually be eating too much either. You know what I mean? Because with lifting the weights, I've noticed that, it increases my hunger, especially because, some days I did it. I was probably like on the 5th, 6th day without my shot to that, I was in that like 5th day where your shot kind of wears down. And yeah, it made me hungry. So that's the thing. So I want to make sure I can refuel without eating anything bad. So I make sure I got my shakes again, especially because a lot of times if I'm lifting weights is at night, it's not in the morning. But doing all of that, it was the first time I had a gain of a pound that I wasn't mad about. I was not mad. I was like, oh, good. It wasn't even a full pound. It was actually like, because I was 223.2. It was about a pound. It was about a pound. But it was muscle. It was muscle. I mean, based on my Bluetooth scale. So that's why I was excited about that, because I'm like, this is working. Like I just said, my pants got smaller, right? And this is what I'm saying all of these things for, because this is what the Holy Grail is, right? The Holy Grail of all of this is to lose fat and gain muscle, right? Lose fat, gain muscle. Now, the reason why I know I lost fat, even though my scale went up 1 pound, is because my pants are smaller, right? My pants went from a 36 to a 34, right? I'm a 34. I'm 224 pounds, but my pants are a 34, and my shirt is an extra large. So that is a victory because I know that my body is gaining muscle, right? So, beautiful, I'm colored. Hey, I was just talking about lifting weights, so you came in just in time, because if most don't know, she is actually she does weightlifting, so you probably should go over and check her page out, because she actually lifts heavy weights. So, and she's doing amazing over there. So if you actually are a female that's interested in actually lifting, you should probably check out Beautiful I Am Colored's page. And if you are a content creator, and Evelyn, her name is Evelyn. So I just, I should say that. For those that don't know, for those that know, but if you don't, you don't. So, and like I paused to say a few minutes ago, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Everybody who has not, please pause, who actually are subscribers, please also hit the bell for notifications, so that way you can be notified when we're available, when it is that we're on, so that way you'll get that identification. That was super kind of you. Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, you killing it, Evelyn. I mean, the lifting those weights you lifting. I mean, you probably outlift me. You know what I mean? You probably make me look sad. You know what I mean? I'm scared of you. I get on there, they be like, look at this guy. This lady outlifting him. He don't know what he's doing. So, but I just started to because she's lifting heavy weights and she's doing really good at it. You know what I mean? So she's well versed in that, and I think you guys should check her out. But yes, so, what I decided to do was I'm not only just doing my walk, I do my walking and my lift, and I also do the working out the same day. Because the other thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is you kind of got to add stress to your body a little bit in order to see a result, right? Because if you're not stressing your body at all, you probably actually going to, that's where you kind of, especially if you're seeing like a plateau or a stall, your body needs a little more stress. You know what I mean? And when I say stress, I mean in a good way. In a good way. I'm not saying work to exhaustion or anything like that. I'm saying incorporate something that you might not have before and you can see results. And it's not always going to be by the number or the digit that you see on the scale. It's going to be a physical indication, right? So your physical non-scale indicator should be your clothing fitting in a different way, right? Your clothing should fit different. Your clothing should get smaller, but you also should look different, right? I feel like personally I look better in my shirts now. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm looking better in my shirts just from the few weeks that I started incorporating that weightlifting again. You know what I mean? Because I was doing resistance training with my own body weight, but now actually utilizing those weights, I'm actually seeing subtle differences just in 2 weeks. Now, I am, like I said, also incorporating my actual walk along with that. So there's 2 different walks that we do, right? And I say we because sometimes my wife and my daughter, they'll go with me. So we'll do it together, I should say. What we do is we actually walk the duration, right? We'll do a duration type walk where we actually go like a little more than a mile by walking to the mall here. Or I'll do the hill because near my house, I have a steep hill where you go all the way down, around, and then back up, and the hill is like really, really steep. So if you watch my shorts, you'll see it. All right. Now, I want to go back into the conversation. So I was talking about absorption, right? So what I said was a lot of times we're eating, but we're not absorbing the nutrients from the food. And there are key ways to determine, what is, if we're not, right? If we're not. So basically, when the body fails to absorb nutrients, right? Because I want to give you all the opposite, right? So when the body fails to absorb nutrients properly, it typically presents. Now, listen to these particular indications that your body is not absorbing the nutrients, right? And how we got here is we was talking about your belly, right? Which is the place that is the last to lose most of the time, right? And we talked about nutrition, right? You eating but not getting the nutrients from the food, right? And gut health, right? Because gut health is really the key to all of this. Gut health, right? Visceral fat, all of those things, right? So when the body fails to absorb nutrients properly, right? Malabsorption, it typically presents as chronic diarrhea, abdominal bloating, foul smelling, fatty floating stools, and unintentional weight loss. Other common signs include chronic fatigue, thinning hair, skin rashes, muscle wasting, indicating widespread deficiencies, right? So malabsorption can stem from conditions like celiac disease, Crohn's disease, chronic pancreatitis, cystic fibrosis, and lactose intolerance, right? Now, the reason why I would say the things that what we're looking at is we are on GLP-1s, a lot of us, right? Or GLP-2s for that matter, right? So the thing is, with us being on these different, medications that actually have the potential, right, to cause gut irritation, right, and malabsorption, we definitely want to make sure that we actually recognize it and then not necessarily blame the medication alone for what's happening, right? Because our bodies could just not be absorbing, the nutrients. So I did start talking about, how all of my blood work was optimal. But I will say one thing that was like, I would say not out of range, but out of range, because depending on what it is that the lab that you use to actually get your results, so nationally, if your creatinine is 1.34, 1.35, that's elevated, right? Depending on the national labs. But if you go to certain, like I use LabCorp, with theirs, it's like 1.28 or 1.29. Mine was like 1.28 something. So it was like borderline. So what that leads to usually is dehydration, right? So in all actuality, right, the conversation was sometimes physicians misread or misdiagnose things because they actually understand. They understand. I know. I remember yours was too, Grant. And I'm about to get. Okay, mine was 1.28. Mine was 1.28. Right. So, and what I'm about to get to with that is I'm about to give you a key right here. Here's the thing, because a lot of times physicians, they can read that, right? And remember, I said, even with the Bluetooth scale, sometimes people can look at the direction, they can read it, but still not comprehend what it is that they're reading, right? So it's the same thing with the doctors with the biomarkers, right? Especially if they're like a primary physician. Sometimes they can misread if they don't specialize. And what I mean by that is sometimes you might have a dietitian that knows better, when it comes to certain labs within those results, right? And where I was going with the creatinine was, you can drink a whole bunch of water and still be dehydrated. You can drink a whole bunch of water, and when I say a whole bunch, right? Let me not use the word bunch because we're gonna have a scientific conversation. You could be drinking 3 liters of water, right? 3 liters for ladies, 4 liters for men, right? Me, usually I can get about 3 liters. I can't really get the 4. 4 is a bit much for me. The whole gallon, I usually could get on a really, really good day. I usually get about 100 ounces, but most of the time I'm around a 90. I can't get 125. That's way too much for me. I just can't do it. But I can drink all that water and still be dehydrated. Now, we say, well, how? How are you still dehydrated? The reason being is because I still could be lacking in electrolytes. You know what I'm saying? If I'm, drinking all that water and it's not being absorbed. So I can take a test, right? And it can tell me, well, hey, you dehydrated. And I'm saying, well, how am I dehydrated? If I'm drinking all of this water, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. Well, because when you lose weight, because I did this thing, this short, where I got about 1,000 views on it, and we talked about this, where when we talked about the BMI, right? Where the physician, the obesity surgeon said that he was like 30 years. He said that, BMI, proper BMI for a clinically obese person, a person that was 40 or more, BMI is really 27. That's optimal. It's not 24. Like a lot of people are 25 or below 25 is 27, right? Because your body has morphed or adapted to your biology or current way of living, right? Which has been to be obese all of this time. Your organs are enlarged. So a lot of times if you get down to what is considered ideal for the general population, you're going to look a little bit funny. You know what I mean? So I said, he said ideal for you isn't ideal for them. That's another conversation. But what I'm saying is he was one of the first people to say you lose a lot of fluid in weight loss, even when you're drinking all that. So it's not odd for you to actually come up with that, to be shown as dehydrated. So it's not bad to actually put a little bit of an electrolyte if that's, something that you're seeing, and you're not absorbing that. So it was eye-opening to me, from the dietitian, and the differences is because comprehension is key. You can have, that's just like, the first thing, a lot of the physicians do, for a lot of ladies especially, is when they have that iron deficiency, they put you on all these high iron pills. You know what I mean? But there might be a separate deficiency causing that, right? So what it is it's almost like putting water in a boat that has a hole in it. If that makes sense to you. You're putting water in a boat that got a hole in it, right? It's still leaking and you just put more and more water in it, right? So it's very important for your doctor to be able to comprehend what it is that they're reading, and for us to make sure that we actually take it a little bit farther sometimes. If we go a little bit farther, we get to learn a little bit more, and we can help we have to be advocates of health for ourselves, right? Because we might be actually getting information that the masses are receiving, and it might not fit us, right? So that's why you got to be very careful and really dive into your journey and really go ahead and investigate behind what it is that you're told, And so anytime that I get on these airways, right, I try to bring y'all stuff that makes sense, right? Because I want to actually give you things that you might not have thought about. It might be thought-provoking, and something that might just flat out help you because you say, oh, I didn't look at it that way, right? That's usually my goal. It might not happen all the time, but that's what you get out of, this channel. So tonight, like I said, I wanted to jump on and talk about the, utilizing hey, Darian. I wanted to talk about utilizing. You late, man. Where you been at? We 45 minutes in. You just now showing up. You know, you always getting on me about being late. You 45 minutes in. Come on now. You might have been taking that nap, that trusty nap again, huh? King Darian. No, but yeah, in all seriousness, I was talking about, like I said, the belly fat and how to get rid of it. That's how we got off into this whole thing here. Because that's the last 45 minutes and you still ain't said nothing. Get on out of here, man. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? We definitely, want to make sure that we are actually able to optimize nutrition and that we're not we're and that we're and that we're okay. Yeah, and that we want to make sure that we optimize our nutrition. We're not just eating food and not actually retaining the nutrients from that food, right? Because that's the thing. You want to make sure you're absorbing that stuff, because if you put food in your mouth, that don't necessarily mean that, you're actually getting, something, you're getting the nutrients that you're supposed to get. So what does that mean? You also want to make sure that you take the multivitamins, because there's a time where you might miss electrolytes where you feel like you might need them, because these are all the things that are going to help you to actually, maintain your medication, right? Because that's kind of where I was going with it. In order to lose the belly fat, which is the last to go, you got to stay consistent. That's really what it is. It's still doing all of the same stuff. It just takes the longest to leave you. It will leave you, but you got to stay consistent, because consistency is the one thing that we actually are fighting in our actual GLP-1 community. How many people do you have that's just jumping off the medication? Well, I want to say they're just jumping off. What I mean is they're not titrating down slowly. They're just stopping, right? And you can't do that because this is a medication that builds in your system, right? I'm careful not to actually give my opinion on a dose until I've spent 1 month on it, right? Because what we know is it takes 4 weeks for that dose to build. That dose has to build in your system. And after that 4 weeks, you can probably you might be able to give a good opinion, right? Especially after you've been on it for maybe 2 or 3 months, right? Like right now, I've been on the 12.5 for 3 months, right? So I'm able to give a good opinion, probably 3 months in a week. Right, 12.5 has been amazing for me. Right, I've actually been able to go to the bathroom more and stuff like that, because that I wasn't able to do, let's say, on the 10. Because most people think they got to go down for things to change, but in fact, some people go up and things change. Right, some people go to 12.5 or 15 and start to see the better. Right, because what we're seeing right now is a whole like dredging of, oh my God, don't go up that high. Oh my God, this is causing brain fog. Oh my God, it's called. You get all of the bad stuff. But there's a lot of good too for some people with the higher doses as well, right? And I think that a lot of people, before they got on these particular treatments, you already had brain fog. You already was tired. You already was sick, right? If you sick, tired, and brain fog when you get on, you can't now say, oh, well, it's just the medicine. You was showing up like that before you even got on any of this stuff. So what I'm saying is dive a little bit deeper, right? Look to see if you actually are mild, have mild absorption of your actual nutrients that you're eating. You could be eating food, because that's the thing we do. Everything with us is pretty much surface, right? Oh, I counted macros, I counted calories, I drank this many ounces of water, right? But is it actually absorbing in your body? Is it taking? Now, to the lay person, we can't know that without, necessarily taking a blood test, but I just laid out other signs. There are other signs. You kind of gotta optimize your gut health, right? In order to actually be healthy overall. And some of us need to make sure that we are taking, and I just actually started taking my Align again because I had stopped taking that, but I think I do need to take it along with this because I want to make sure that I have proper, gut health, prebiotic, probiotic. You can wash out nutrients your body needs with too much water. Yeah, you can. You can do that. You can do that. And that's what I was saying, Grant. I want to say you might not wash them out, you know what I mean? But what I'm saying is you can mess with the absorption, you know what I mean, of them. They might be washed out, but that can be a factor in them not being absorbed properly, you know what I mean? Because they're not getting to where they need to be, you know what I mean? And at least they're not remaining. Let me say they're not remaining in your system long enough to absorb appropriately. So maybe I should say that. But like I said, if you have a lot of bloating all the time, that is one of those signs, you know what I mean? Outside of regular menstruation and stuff like that for the females, because there are different hormonal things, fibroids and different things as to you can hurt your kidneys with too much water. Yeah, you can. But I will say the basic recommendations, if you're within that, you probably won't. You know what I mean? Like if most women are getting 2 to 3 liters and most men are getting 3 to 4, that's not the realm of washout and too much water for most, right? Unless you already have pre-existing kidney issues, in which that's a one-off. But for the masses who are generally on the weight loss medications, you want to get about 2 to 3 liters if you're a lady and 3 to 4 if you're a guy. So 3 liters is right in the middle. So if you're there, it's okay. What my conversation was more so about was when you actually see a dehydration as a biomarker. I'm just saying hello to y'all. If you actually see that as a biomarker, issue, like your creatinine or something is showing that you're dehydrated, I was simply saying you can drink the appropriate amount of water and still be dehydrated because you're not receiving electrolytes, right? Now, everybody know my stance on that. You also don't want to just be slamming packets and packets and packets and packets of electrolytes, right? On heavy lifts, I take electrolyte. It helps a ton, especially midway through the heavy lifting. However, I do not consume electrolytes on non-heavy. Yeah, see, so you have a rhythm. See what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. You do need to have a rhythm, and that's exactly what I mean. Know when and know when not to. All I'm saying is make sure that you investigate a little bit farther. Because again, all of us are very surface level with some of this because it becomes overwhelming when you're doing a lot of it. We take the number on the scale, right? The first number we see, right? We take good to get the amount of water your doctor wants you to drink for sure. Yeah, that's for sure, Grant. But these are that's pretty much universal. That's universal for most. It's 2 to 3 liters. At most days, is what you kind of looking for. That's just general. It's not, you don't really need a physician. It's for ladies, it's at least 2 liters. For guys, it's at least 3 liters. You can drink more, and not necessarily, you probably don't want to do more than a gallon, but those are the parameters of normal, I should say. But yeah, so the thing is, you definitely want to make sure that when your physician checks all of these biomarkers, they're not just pretty much saying, all right, well, hey, I prescribe this for everybody and I'm gonna prescribe it for you, right? When in all actuality, what you want to do is you want to make sure that they're not just generalizing your care, because sometimes it's something a little bit deeper, and you don't want it to become to a point where it's like, all right, I'm gonna get off my medication because I'm feeling this, and your doctor didn't identify it. When in fact, a lot of times it's not optimizing your gut health. Most of us need a lot of us. I don't want to say most of us. Most is not a term I'm using. I want to say a lot of us need to optimize our gut health by making sure we have the proper prebiotic, probiotic. I mean, I personally use a line. I like it. I think it's really good. But that's one that I pretty much use because we need something in addition, you know what I mean, to regular nutrients along with your multivitamin, right? So these are some of the just basic things. And that's not saying go get a whole bunch of supplements. Here's another key, because what we hear a lot of? Fiber. What you also don't want to do is be blasting your system with a whole bunch of fiber. You know what I mean? Fiber supplements. I'm about to start weightlifting. Evelyn, I'm almost at goal, so I want a 6-pack. I don't know. Evelyn might run us out the room. I don't think we built like that to be messing with Evelyn yet. We're gonna have to get our weight up first. Once we get our weight up, then we're gonna, we'll start talking to Evelyn Wheelhouse. Well, I can't speak for everybody else, but she doing her thing over there with them weights. But yeah, I think that we have to make sure that we optimizing, you know what I mean, making sure we're getting the proper nutrients, because if you're not getting the proper nutrients, that could bleed into why you feeling the way you feel. Vitamin B is absolutely a big one. Come on, 6-pack, you can do it. Yeah, so the vitamin B is a big one. So a lot of people that's having that fatigue is probably vitamin B deficient. You probably need to actually look at your vitamin B absorption, because you can even be getting vitamin B but not enough. Because the vitamins that I actually suggested that Anissa take was the 1-a-day Pro Edge, which is the ones I take, because it has more vitamin B than the regular. Because it's for energy, right? It's a vitamin for energy, along with the regular regular old multivitamin, the daily stuff. So if you're looking for energy, you probably got to optimize your vitamin B. You probably need some sort of prebiotic for you to help optimize that gut health, to make sure, that you're absorbing the nutrients that you're putting in. Because a lot of people say, well, I ate this, I ate that, I drunk this, I drunk that. But is it being absorbed in the body, right? Because all of this goes back to the conversation, which was about gut health, right? It was about gut health because we started about talking about measurements, right? If we get off of this live, right? And all y'all go grab a tape measure and you take it and you certainly get that six pack. You're a determined man. And you take that tape measure and you go around that belly, right? If I'm a man, is it going to say 39? Is it going to say 39? If I'm a lady, is it going to say 34 or less? If not, we might have some work to do no matter what the scale says. No matter what the scale says. That's the thing. So we cannot be so reliant on the scale. We have to start utilizing and checking that body fat, right? And this is a way where you don't have to run out and spend money on a DEXA scan. You don't, because you can start right there. This is the most vital part, right? It's the most vital part. Now, you can be more vain and start, trying to check your, like a lot of guys, they say, well, let me go and check my bicep. I want to put the tape measure around the bicep and see, like, now you can have growth in your bicep, you know what I mean? Like, and I think you got to go right around the middle here. Like, this is where you go. But the thing is, it's not necessarily that's not important. What's important is you going around that waist, you know what I mean? Because that's where that visceral fat lies, right? Now, with the ladies, they might say, well, I'm going around my hip, around the bottom, because they carry more weight there. But the thing is, it's okay if you do, because the thing is, most ladies do carry. And in fact, ladies are allowed to carry more fat than guys because of hormonal issues, right? And they need the additional fat, right, to function appropriately. So it's actually okay. Now, what you don't want to be, waist under 39 for men. For men, waist needs to be 39 or less for men. For men. For women, it should be 35 or under 35. I'm sorry, 34, right? One thing not spoken about weight loss, social life mindset, often still same as when we were heavier. Yeah, absolutely. That is another good topic, because that's the thing. But if you were to actually, like I said, go and grab a tape measure, that's kind of what we need to do. Because we all every day we say, how much you weigh now? How much you weigh now? How much? Let's not worry so much about weight and start worrying about the actual body fat percentage, which will actually drive true health, right? So there's that. So outside of the body fat percentage and the waist measurement, I wanted to touch on the wegovy pill, right? And the reason why I wanted to touch on it is because a lot of the fraudsters have actually started their stuff. And what I mean by started their stuff is they're trying to actually get people to actually give them empty bottles, to where they can resell fake pills. So if you are a person that actually considers that and do go the pill route, you want to make sure that, you aren't participating in any of that fraud, because they're actually offering a little bit of money, for that, because people want to put fake pills. And I also want to add, right, that the wegovy pill is very small. It's probably about pinky size, probably the tip of your pinky, right? Are you still suggesting shifting focus from weight? Are you suggesting shifting focus from weight to waist? I'm suggesting shifting focus to body fat percentage versus actual total weight on a scale. Yes, shifting focus from body weight, total body weight to body fat percentage. Yes, because you can be a low weight and still be in a danger zone if you have too much visceral fat, right? And like I said, I like to use myself, right? So I've lost nearly 100 pounds. I'm at 224 pounds today, right? My lowest recorded weight was 224. But again, I enjoy the fact that I've gained some muscle, so I'm not mad at my gain, my 1 pound gain. But my also shared that my pant size is now a 34. My pant size when I started this was a 44. So I went from a 44 to a 34. I haven't worn a 34 probably since I was in 8th grade. So if that is any consolation, I haven't worn a pant size of a 34 since I was in 8th grade. And I bought some pants and I tried them on just yesterday, and I was able to fit into a 34. So that's like hip hop parade for me. But I also measured my belly, and my belly is still above a 40, right? And so since my belly is above a 40, I'm still not as healthy as I need to be considered healthy, or have optimal health, because my belly is still too large, right? I still have, too much belly fat to be considered, healthy, because when you have visceral fat, it's around the organs. That's the most dangerous part, right? So this is why you see, like, you see those, like, sometimes the older men, right? And they had 184.9. When you see the older men, right? And they got the big basketball belly, but their body parts are so slim. They got the real slim body, but they got the belly fat. That's visceral fat. That's visceral fat, right? So that's definitely something that you got to really be wary of and get to work on it, right? If you're seeing that, because that's the most dangerous. That's the most dangerous type of fat. That is the most dangerous type of fat. So before we can call ourselves healthy, we have to decrease that. And I was talking about the ways to do it. The belly is the last to go, but you have to optimize, right? You got to optimize. So all right, so I'll do the to lose belly fat, focus on comprehensive approach combining a calorie-controlled, nutrient-dense diet with regular aerobic exercise and strength training. Key strategies include reducing refined carbohydrates, sugary drinks, increasing fiber and protein intake, managing stress to lower cortisol, and ensuring adequate sleep. Right? Those are the cookie cutter, ways that they say of, losing it. Now, if you break that down, right, what do I mean when I say reduce? When I say reducing reduce sugars and refined carbs, limit items like sodas, white bread, pastas, which can lead to increased abdominal fat, increased fiber and protein, right? Consume more vegetables, fruits, beans, and lean proteins, right? Fish, eggs, chicken. Protein helps you feel full longer and maintain muscle mass. Prioritize whole foods, focuses on eating whole, unprocessed foods. Watch portion sizes. A consistent calorie deficit is necessary for overall fat loss, right? Exercise, aerobic exercise, right? Aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate or 300 minutes of high intensity activity weekly to burn calories such as running, swimming, or brisk walking. Strength training, lift weights 2 to 3 times a week to build muscle, which increases your metabolism to burn more calories. Manage stress. High stress increases cortisol, which can stimulate appetite and promote belly fat storage. Get sufficient sleep. Aim for 7 hours. Sleep nightly, as adequate sleep is linked to inadequate sleep is linked to weight gain, right? So there are some myths. There's no spot reduction. You cannot specifically target fat loss only in the stomach, right? Doing exercises like crunches strengthen muscles, but do not directly burn belly fat, right? And supplements are not magic. Be cautious of belly fat burning supplements, as they are not proven to be effective. So those are the internet, directions, right? Just to be like very specific. But what I will say, all the things that I mentioned, right? Making sure that here's the thing, right? A lot of times on the internet we get, and not just the internet, but even in society, right? We got these broad recommendations, right? Like they said, exercise for 150 minutes, right? 150 minutes. So I think what a lot of people take that as, right? Which means you can walk 30 minutes a day, right? Now, what people assume is, okay, I can sit down from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and at 5 p.m. I can walk for 30 minutes every day, Monday through Friday, all right, and I'm done. That's what people think that they did. So you gotta kind of like use your own common sense with the recommendations. You gotta mix it up, and you gotta put more stress on the body, like I said, to get a different result, right? And what I mean by that is, like I said, I'm one that's accustomed to doing my walks on certain days and then doing my strength training on other days. I've since made sure I start combining them. I do my walk, then come in the house, and then work out, right? So because I want to do both. Now, some people might say, oh, well, that's like people in the gym. They get on the treadmill, get off, then they go do weight training. But for people that don't go to the gym, a lot of us, we have certain days that we might walk the durations, walk the hills, which is our incline, and then other days where we just focus on strength training. But I'm saying to actually stress the body and take it to somewhere that it's not used to or make it a little more uncomfortable, you try to do both, right? And I'm not saying hurt yourself, but you do both so that way it can actually, yield a different result, right? That's kind of what I'm saying. But you don't want to just go for the cookie cutter recommendation of, oh, it says 150 minutes, so that means that Monday through Friday, I'm going to walk for 30 minutes, I'm done. That's probably not going to get it, right? What that also means is that throughout the day, right, this is where you can actually look at kind of step count, right? So throughout the day, and I'm not saying you got to get 10,000 steps, because that's another cookie cutter thing, but you do need to increase your steps 2,000 to 3,000 more than what you actually do now, right? So if you're somebody that's maybe doing 3,000 steps a day, try to get to 5, right? And how you do that is, whereas you normally would sit at your desk for the entire time, if you have a sedentary job, you want to say, hey, well, at 9:50, I'm going to just pretty much stand up and I'm going to take my laptop over there and I might walk around for 10 minutes, right? You didn't go outside, but you're inside and you walk around for 10 minutes, right? Because that's going to start breaking the monotony. There's little things throughout the day that actually just makes you more of a mover, right? You just start moving a little bit more, right? That's one thing. And again, like I said, you cannot, just say, hey, I'm going to just take, weight off of my stomach. It don't work like that. You have to actually do all of these things on a consistent basis for a long time, and you will naturally see it come down because it's the last to go, but it's all still a part of the engine, right? So that's what I mean. It's very comprehensive. So you got to keep doing all of the things. Keep taking your medication, right? And it should, if you need a weight loss treatment, right? But I was talking about the Wegovy pill. So the Wegovy pill is pretty much like the less than half the pinky. That's how small it is. It's that small. And it's circled, right? And I'm only talking about this because of the fraud that's happening now. The 1.5 and the 4 milligram are white, right? They're white. And they're circled. And they're very small. And it says Novo on one side, your strength on the other side. The higher milligram, and I know the lay person, I mean, obviously, I manage a pharmacy, so I see these things. They haven't seen this. The actual higher milligram pills are oval, right? This is how you know if you're getting counterfeit or not. And I'm saying this because a lot of people, some people are trying it. They're going into this in maintenance and stuff like that, right? So what it is the larger pill, right? The stronger pill. The stronger pill is oval, right? It's 9 milligrams on one side, Novo on the other side. The 25 milligram is Novo on one side, 25 milligrams, but they're oval. You got the circle, you got the oval, right? These particular pills, what you have to do is you have to take them, pretty much first thing in the morning, right? A typical day would probably look at 7 a.m. You get up, you take your pill with probably about 2 to 3 ounces of water, right? Because you can't drink a lot of water either. And then you can eat after a couple of hours, right? That's pretty much typical every single day. Now, when the orforglipron comes out, that'll be different because you actually won't have to do that. You can actually drink your Profi, or coffee, right? And take it right away. You don't have to, there's no waiting. You don't have to worry about food, and the reason why we're talking about this is because of the fraud, right? And I wanted people to know, like what the pills look like, and the usage of them, because people are trying to start frauding people. Now, with that, right, I think that the orforglipron might do a bit better because people don't have to wait. They can eat right away, right? They can take their pill, eat right away. It won't matter. But these pills have what you call snack technology. And snack technology keeps them from breaking down in the stomach lining, very quickly as it would without it, right? So that's why they had to wait. What I have seen with the pill so far, because that's like the next thing, right? People always say, what's the next thing? What's going on? So right now, what I'm seeing with it is a lot of people that move to it for cost, right? Because they say, well, these are cheaper. Because they are, because you can get them for $150, between $150 and $200 to start, right? On the 2 lower doses. The higher doses are $299, right? So they're a bit more expensive. But they're still, in essence, cheaper than a high dose Zepbound, right? Because if you're on a high dose Wegovy, you're pretty much paying the same for a low dose Zepbound, right? So I say all that to say, from what I saw, for a few, some people it is working, but for a lot of people it's not. If you were on a Zepbound and then went to change and decided that you were going to change and go, over to this particular, pill, because it's to me an inferior treatment to Zepbound. Now, if you haven't took weight loss treatment at all and you want to try it, I think it might be a good thing if you're able to take a pill every single day, right? Now, if you're a lady and you had issues with keeping up with your daily birth control pill, this probably ain't for you, right? If you're a guy that pretty much, runs out the house and leaves your wallet, that probably ain't for you, right? So you probably want to stick to your weekly shot, and the effectiveness from what I've seen has been much better with taking the weekly shot so far for people that has been on the drug before. People that have never been on a drug at all, it might be a win. It might be a win because they haven't had any other treatment in their system. So, we'll see. Now, what I don't think is a good idea is for people that are kind of like super morbidly obese, those with the BMI of 45, 50 and stuff like that, because you have you have at least 100 pounds to lose. And these particular drugs, well, I say this, well, I'll just speak for Wegovy since that's already out. It promotes 15%. So we know on the low end, it's getting at least 5% for almost everybody, but it gets about 20% on the high end for others, right? So then when you think about that from a weight perspective, right? We're just talking about from a weight perspective, that might not yield what it is that you're looking for, because more than likely you're probably only going to get, again, if you're probably like a 300-pound lady, you probably only get about 60 pounds out of that, which again is pretty good, because that could be clinically significant, but not necessarily significant enough for you to overhaul the health that you're looking for goal-wise if you want to lose more than 100 pounds, right? That's where you probably have to get on the shot, of like, let's say a Zepbound, because we're seeing with that on average about, in the I think Surmount 4, where they went 88 weeks, about 25, 26%, right? So and that on average, and again, we're talking about average. So that means that people on the higher end are losing 35, sometimes 40%, right? So now you're talking about a different ball game, right? Talking about a different ball game, because that's going to net you that 100 pounds, or more that you're looking for, right? You can get that 100, 110 pounds off that you got to get off. So, yeah. So there's that, and I always do, my wife's update, because I know y'all always want to, talk, y'all like to talk about her, updates, and she's doing really good. She lost, just shy of another pound this week. So, she's on the 10 milligram, of Zepbound, and, she's down to 160, for those that, who usually want to know, keep up with her. So she's doing really good. She's down to 160 pounds. She started at 197. So, for her to lose 37 pounds, you know what I mean? And just, I think 27 weeks. I think she's on week 27. I'm pretty certain it's like week 27. Yeah, she's down 37 pounds. So I think that's she's just trucking right along. And I put her pictures on the newest thumbnail, so you can see how she looks on the picture. I think she's looking really good, and she's doing, amazing. As for me, and I got her some weights too, because she showed an interest, like I was telling everybody, you know what I mean? So I grabbed some weights. So she's gonna be lifting some weights, and just, kind of keeping that, that getting that body recount, just like me. Like I said, for myself, I'm actually on the 12.5 milligram. I've been on that for about 3 months. I've lost, I guess, 96 pounds over 60. I think I'm going into 63 weeks, something like that, or if not, very close. I think y'all think I'm just entering my 63rd week. I took my weight and everything, but I didn't write it. I always write it down. But see, there it is. I'm so far in the journey now, I'm forgetting to write it down. I never did that before. But yeah, that's kind of like where I am. So I'm actually, yes, Taisha, looking great, sis. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Evelyn. But yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at. So we are just trucking along with each other. Let me get in the chat and see what happened here tonight. See the damage Darian caused. Because Darian be cutting up in his chat. I like to go back to the top and just go through, just make sure I don't miss nothing. I skip past the haze and everything, and I just look at if there's any questions. And if y'all got any questions at all before we get off live tonight, y'all can actually put the Q's in the chat. If there's any questions about the things that I talked about tonight, about the belly measurement, about the nutrient absorption, about optimizing, your gut health, about, making sure that your doctor is comprehending your results, and they're not just, giving you the treatment that they give to the masses, stuff like that. You can actually put that in there before we jump off of here. Okay, yeah, I think I went through it all. Yeah, and yeah, mindset is very important. 'Cause I'm going back to something that traveling techie had said. Basically, mindset is something that sometimes it takes a while to catch up. Right? Because we've been heavier for so long that sometimes we still thinking in the mind of a heavier person, right? And it's going to be a while, before we actually kind of shed that. What's going to shed that socially is us just sort of kind of like just existing. If we exist and we, get out there socially and move around, like everything else will evolve. I don't mean just existing, I mean evolving. That's what I should have said. Evolving. We will evolve and not just exist. We'll evolve and get out there and kind of change what those norms are, because we're the people that kind of create the norms, right? So we have a lot of power. There's a lot of power behind your actions. So I think that a lot of times if we get out there and do things that we pretty much a lot of times don't, or we probably we shy away from, I think that we'll get more comfortable and just and we'll be able to go ahead and, kind of shed some of those kind of thoughts, around like the stigmas and stuff like that. So, it's just about getting out there and just changing it, and doing it for the better. Just like how we show up here and we had these conversations. This is all you do. You jump on and have conversations, talk about it, and figure out, new ways to adapt, you know what I mean, and keep rolling. But I think that, we are, kind of moving towards a healthy mindset. We do have some things coming up I want to talk about real fast before we do get out of here. We have the interview of myself. Me and Paul are going to do one. We're going to be dropping a date soon. I got to send him some pictures. I'll probably send you those pictures tonight, Paul, if you're still here, if you haven't jumped off. I'll send you the picture so we can start putting the promo out for that, because we're going to do the interview pretty much soon. We are going to do another roundtable. You guys don't know about, but we was kind of on our men's group chat. Me, Darium, the boys are back in town. Me, Grant, Darium, Paul, Round Mail. So we're going to pull the table out. We're going to, talk about some stuff. So April should be pretty fun. You know what I mean? We're going to get the round table going. We got some interviews going. So, it should be, a real packed, we got a real packed agenda. So I think it's going to be a real good time. So, like I always do about this time, I like to thank everybody for joining me. I like to thank everybody for, liking the stream tonight. Please make sure you did like the tap the bell to make sure that your notifications are turned on. So when it is that I do go live, you'll know about it. Most people know I'm here every Sunday night, but I also, like I said, been trying to do something in the middle of the week, just to try to keep things rolling. I'm very organic. I don't really make up, stuff. I kind of take it as it comes. I feel like it's more natural. You know what I mean? But it is helpful, to have, some questions. So if you guys, like I said, have any questions or anything like that, you can feel free to send them to me. TT will be on RMZ on Tuesday. Okay, so we got our man T is going to be on RMZ's interview on Tuesday night. So make sure y'all actually mark your calendars for that. So that'll be good. I'll make sure I tune in, and I check it out. He's gonna be on RMZ. We got a few more. We got GLP-1 Muscle. I think that's his. I think he's the next. I think he's the one right after him. And then he has another guy that I don't really know. But every Tuesday, check out RMZ's channel, because he has a different person. A different guy that he interviews every Tuesday night. So make sure that y'all hop on there. For those of us on the East Coast, it could be a little late. I think it's usually around 9 p.m. Over here, because it's usually 6 p.m. over there. So usually around 9 p.m., make sure y'all checking out RMZ's channel, because he's going to have one of the guys on there pretty much going over their life-changing story. And then also just, promoting, helping, the men's health, right? So if you got a significant other, let's make sure that we, talk to that particular guy and, try to get him to, sit down and check it out, because sometimes it's very interesting. Even if they don't necessarily suffer with obesity, they may know somebody that does, that they're trying to actually figure out how to have a conversation with, because that's the other side of it. We need to start figuring out how to have conversations with our, other family members, surrounding it, because if we're going to help the world, we definitely want to help those that are near and dear or either close to us, right? So that's what we want to try to do, okay? All right, so with that being said, I'm going to let you guys get the rest of your Sunday back. I think we had a very good live tonight, so, I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys again next Sunday around the same time. Usually I'll put the alert out Saturday. Maybe I'll do it or Sunday. I'll try to do it maybe a couple days ahead, just so that way, we can spread the word. So please, spread the word around. G's 101, talking about all things GLP-1 and other stuff, right? We're influencers over here, not necessarily creators, right? So, all right. So like I always like to end all of my chats, obesity warriors, stand up. We're in this together. Later.